Israel is a small country in the Middle East, which, despite its small size, has a great history and on the territory of which one of the most ancient nations of the world, the Jews, lives. So, what is it like to live in Israel in 2022? And in general, how does the state of Israel exist? Let's find out. First of all, let's start with the geography of Israel. Israel is located in the southwest of Asia, on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. The coastline is 230 kilometers. It borders Lebanon in the north, Syria in the northeast, Jordan in the east, and Egypt in the southwest. In the south is the Red Sea, coastline 12 kilometers, and of course the dying Dead Sea in the southeast. In short, we can say that geography of Israel is not bad. Israel has access to 3 seas at once, but at the same time the territory of Israel itself, that is land, is deserts and semi-deserts, on which it is rather difficult to develop the agriculture industry. Also, do not forget about the natural threats of Israel. Natural hazards include dust storms, common in spring in the arid south of the country, droughts during the summer months, sudden floods, especially dangerous in low-lying desert areas due to the lack of a warning system, and frequent earthquakes associated with the presence of the El Gore graben in the country. Also, due to the high population density, Israel lacks arable land. Of course, the Israeli government increases arable land by irrigating deserts, but this process requires a lot of water, which is not enough in Israel. We have finished about the geography of Israel. It's time to talk about the economy of Israel. Israel is considered one of the most developed countries in the Middle East in terms of economy and industrial development. But at the same time, the Israeli economy is highly dependent on external assistance, primarily from the United States. Thus, Israel leads in the total amount of aid received from the United States after World War II. But despite the strong dependence of the Israeli economy on external factors, Israel has a developed agriculture sector. Israel even manages to export its agriculture products to other countries. Own agriculture sector provides Israel with food for 95%. Tourism also plays an important role in the Israeli economy. Israel is ravaged by 3 seas at once, so tourism can be developed on a large scale in Israel, which is what the Israeli government is doing. Also, Israel has a long history, and ancient buildings have been preserved in Israel, which contributes to the development of tourism. Israel also has a developed industry. The structure of industrial production is dominated by high-tech products. The state of Israel pursues a policy of subsidizing enterprises engaged in research and implementation of new technologies. Annually, about $400 million is allocated for these purposes. There is an office of the chief scientist under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. We have dealt with the economy, so let's get down to the most interesting part of Israel, namely the Defense Army of the State of Israel, or the IDF. And you might be asking why this is the most interesting part of Israel. Because even at the moment while you are watching this video, Israel is waging war or enmity with the countries of the Arab League, and it has been waging this war since the proclamation of Israel as an independent state, that is 83 years. First, let's start with a brief background. Perhaps you know that the most affected nation in the Second World War II was the Jewish people, so the United Nations decided to create its own Jewish state that can defend itself at the right time. But the place for the creation of this state was the territory where not only Jews lived, but also Arabs. Because of this, the Arab-Jewish conflict began. So, according to the law, all citizens of Israel, including those with dual citizenship and living in another country, as well as all those permanently residing in the territory of the state, upon reaching 18 years of age, are subject to contribution for service in the IDF. And at the same time, you will not be taken away for a year, but for 2.5 years in the army if you are a man, or for 2 years if you are a woman. And it won't feel like a good American war show. No, you won't be driven around the field where you spend your nights in tents and shoot at the barriers from time to time. No, you must understand that your country is at war with other countries, and if some big conflict starts between your country and the warring countries, you will be the first to be taken to the war, just like cannon fodder. Military registration in Israel. Na 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 na. Wait a second. Hello. Hello. You're a brand new soldier, aren't you? Yes, I am. Go to the front line. Huh? No. Very good job, I think. I need to go. Na 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 na. Na, 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 na. Israel is one of the most developed countries in the world, and probably the only one, along with South Korea, which has to allocate a lot of money to the military sphere and send its citizens to compulsory military service every 3 years, while Israel's civil society is very educated. For example, imagine a picture. You are a scientist somewhere in Israel, and even you have to take up arms every 3 years, but not because of your desire, but because it is necessary for your country. Now let's talk about the social sphere in Israel. First, forget about it. Israel is one of the most densely populated states in the world, so social problems will constantly haunt the people of Israel. If you live in Israel, you should get used to small and densely populated houses, to narrow streets, to large congestion in the medical fields. Because of this, you will not be able to receive the necessary medical care on time. Also, you should get used to the national problems of Israel, since Israel is a country with heterogeneous and warring peoples, and you will have to get used to it. Outcome: Israel is one of the most developed countries in the Middle East, where you can live with pleasure. If you like to live in a small house, risk your life every 3 years, watch your city or country being bombed by neighboring states, then this country is right for you. To be honest, the example of Israel provides to us that the state doesn't not need huge mineral reserves or fertile land for good economic growth. During the years of its independence, the state of Israel was able to build a bring development of society on a desert and small territory, still managing to fight with neighboring countries. All the best for you.